He used to come over to play video games with my son. Always polite, always quiet. Just one of those kids you barely notice, until one day I saw something in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. Something honest. Something aching. What he shared with me that afternoon changed the way I saw him, and myself, forever. Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts or story in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. Now, before I begin, tell me, where are you watching from? I'd love to know which cities and towns are joining me for this memory that stayed with me for years. It started on a late spring afternoon, the kind of day when the sunlight feels more golden than bright and everything outside hums softly with life. My house, a quiet one-story place on the edge of town, had the windows open just enough to let in the breeze and the distant sound of lawnmowers. My son Tyler had invited his friend Luke over again. They'd been friends since high school, now both in their early 20s, home from college for the summer. Tyler was the louder one, always full of ideas and jokes. Luke, on the other hand, was thoughtful, measured. He'd always been that way. "Hey, Mom, Luke's staying for dinner," Tyler called out from the hallway as the two of them clattered into the house like a small storm. Of course, I called back, already pulling a casserole from the fridge. I'd made it the night before. Chicken, spinach, creamy sauce, the usual. Something about knowing they'd both be here made me want to set the table properly, even light a candle. Old habits, I guess. The evening moved the way it usually did. Laughter from the living room, the hum of a game console, the occasional shout of victory. I stayed in the kitchen a little longer than needed, watching the way the sky changed through the window, softening into pinks and purples. When dinner was finally served, Tyler was already halfway through telling some wild story from his campus dorm life. Luke smiled quietly, always listening more than he spoke. He was the kind of young man you describe as gentle, though you could sense there was more under the surface. After the meal, Tyler got a call from a friend, something about a last-minute hangout. He looked at me, then at Luke. "Hey, Mom, do you mind if I head out for a bit? Luke'll help clean up." Luke nodded without hesitation. "I don't mind." And just like that, I was alone in the kitchen with Luke. We didn't speak much at first, just the clink of plates, water running over dishes, the soft scrape of utensils being sorted. Then, out of nowhere, Luke said, "You always make the house feel calm." I glanced over at him. He was standing with a dish towel in hand, not looking at me, just quietly focused on the sink. "Calm?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, like safe." There was something in the way he said it that made me stop drying the plate in my hand. "Is everything okay at home, Luke?" He paused. Too long. Then a small shrug. "It's just not like this. Never has been." I didn't press. You learn with boys like him that sometimes silence is the invitation they need. We finished cleaning. I offered him tea, and we sat at the table as the last of the sunlight disappeared, leaving behind the gentle glow of the overhead light and the flicker of the candle still burning from dinner. Luke's eyes were on the flame, quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I don't really talk to many people about things, not even Tyler. I just keep things in." I listened. That's all I did. "My dad's not around much," he said, voice low. "And when he is, it's like walking on broken glass. My mom's tired, always tired. I don't blame her. But it's like no one sees me at home. Not really." There it was, that ache I'd seen earlier in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Luke," I said gently. He looked up at me then, really looked, and for the first time, I realized he wasn't just my son's friend anymore. He was a young man carrying too much, trying so hard to seem like he wasn't. "You don't have to keep everything inside," I said softly. "Not here." His eyes welled up, just a little, but he blinked them away, embarrassed. "I don't know why I said all that," he whispered. "Because you needed to," I replied. "And I'm glad you did." He nodded, and for a long while, we just sat there in the quiet warmth of the kitchen, letting the candle burn down between us. Something shifted that evening, not in a loud or dramatic way, but in a gentle, unmistakable one. He had shared a piece of himself he'd kept hidden, and I had listened. Sometimes that's all it takes to change everything. The next few days passed quietly, but something lingered. Not tension, exactly. More like a thread stretched between 2 points, not pulling but present. I went about my usual routines, morning coffee on the porch, working a few shifts at the library, grocery shopping, cooking. And yet, Luke's words stayed with me. The look in his eyes, the vulnerability he'd allowed himself. Tyler didn't mention anything. He was in and out of the house, busy with friends, summer plans, job interviews. I asked casually now and then, "Luke doing okay?" He'd shrug and say, "Yeah, I guess. Same as always." But I knew different now. It wasn't long before Luke stopped by again. Tyler wasn't home. Out at a barbecue, if I remembered right. I was just stepping outside with a book when I saw Luke's car pull into the driveway. He got out, hesitating for a moment, as if deciding whether to come to the door at all. When he saw me wave from the porch, he smiled, that polite, quiet smile of his, and walked over. "Hi, Miss Reynolds," he said. "Call me Margaret, would you?" I replied, standing to open the screen door. "Tyler's not here, but you're welcome to wait." He hesitated again, then nodded. "I don't mind." Inside, I set the kettle to boil. He stood near the kitchen counter, hands in his pockets, scanning the familiar surroundings like they felt different now. "You look like you've got something on your mind," I said as I filled 2 mugs. Luke exhaled slowly. "I've been thinking about what I said the other night. I hope I didn't overstep." "Not at all," I said, handing him his tea. "You trusted me. That means something." We sat at the table again, the same seats as before. Funny how little routines form without planning. The candle from the last dinner was still on the table, now shorter and slightly misshapen. I lit it again without thinking. Luke glanced at it, then smiled faintly. "You like candles." "I like the warmth," I said. "Makes a house feel less lonely." There was a pause. He stirred his tea without sipping it. "I didn't come to talk about the same things," he said eventually. "I mean, not just that." I waited. I've been trying to figure out why it felt so easy, talking to you. He glanced up, his expression cautious but open. "It's not that I don't have people. I just don't feel like they really hear me. Not the way you did." Something in my chest tightened, not out of sympathy, but recognition. "I think we all want someone to really see us," I said. "That doesn't change, no matter how old you are." He looked surprised by that. "I guess I always thought grown-ups had it all figured out," he said with a half-smile. I chuckled. "We're all just learning in slow motion." The room fell into a comfortable quiet. He sipped his tea. I watched the flicker of the candle. Then gently, Luke said, "You make me feel grounded." I looked at him, startled not by the words, but by the quiet certainty in them. "I didn't mean for that to sound strange," he added quickly. "It's just, You remind me what it's like to feel okay, even if it's only for a little while. I reached across the table, not touching, just letting my hand rest near his. It's not strange, Luke. We all need places and people that feel safe. His hand didn't move, but his eyes did, looking down at where our hands almost met. I've been going to this group at school, he said after a pause. For people who've had rough family stuff. I thought I'd hate it, but it's helped. Still, I think I needed this just as much. I smiled gently. Well, maybe this can be part of your healing too. He nodded slowly, eyes steady. I think it already is. When he left that evening, he looked lighter somehow. Still quiet, still thoughtful, but not weighed down in the same way. And I sat for a long while at that table, the candle still flickering, wondering how many people pass through life without ever being seen, and how sometimes offering your presence, just your steady, honest presence, can make all the difference. The summer deepened. The trees outside turned a richer green, full, and humming with cicadas. There was a rhythm to the days. Warm mornings, quiet afternoons, long dusky evenings. Somewhere in that slow unfolding of time, Luke became a more regular presence at the house. Not always with Tyler either. Sometimes he'd come by to borrow a book, or to return a dish I didn't even remember lending, or just to say hello. It was never planned, but it never felt intrusive. It was like he was slowly drawing a line between where he had been and where he hoped to go. One Saturday, the sky was low and gray, hinting at rain, but never quite delivering it. I was pruning the tomato plants in the back garden when I heard the gate click open. Luke stepped in, hands in his pockets, a familiar look of hesitation on his face. You're becoming a regular, I teased gently. He smiled. Hope that's okay. Of course, I said, brushing off my gloves. You want some iced tea? He nodded, and we sat on the patio, 2 glasses sweating on the table between us. The air was thick, but not unpleasant. I'm starting to realize, he said after a while, that I've been looking for something. Steady. Not exciting or dramatic, just steady. I sipped my tea, listening. I've got a lot of noise in my head, he went on. Expectations, mistakes, things I wish I could say to people who never listened anyway. But when I'm here, he glanced around, the garden, the weathered patio chairs, the laundry fluttering faintly on the line. It's quiet. I nodded. Quiet can be a blessing. Luke leaned back, letting the silence fill the space for a moment. Then he said, You remind me of how my life could feel. If it were different. His words hit with a surprising weight. I looked at him, really looked. Not just as my son's friend. Not just a boy passing through. But as a young man searching for something solid. I've been through my own seasons, Luke, I said. Some louder than others. Some lonelier than I care to admit. He turned to face me, curiosity softening his features. Really? I was your age when I first realized how much I didn't know about myself, and I was much older when I finally gave myself permission to be seen, not as a wife or a mother or someone's support system, but just as me. He was quiet, absorbing that. I think that's why I recognize it in you, I said. That longing. It's not about needing someone to fix anything. It's about being understood. Luke's eyes welled, but not with sorrow this time. Is it strange, he asked carefully, that I feel more understood here than I ever have back home? No, I said. It just means you're paying attention now. We sat there as the sky finally gave in to the rain, a gentle drizzle that made the air cooler, softer. I pulled an old blanket from the patio box and draped it over our legs. He didn't move away. There was nothing romantic in the moment, just presence. A rare and quiet closeness that needed no explanation. After a long pause, he whispered, "I'm trying to be better." "You are," I said. "You already are?" We sat like that until the rain passed, the world smelling of wet earth and new beginnings. Something had shifted again. Not in what was said, but in what wasn't. He was no longer just a guest, and I was no longer just someone offering comfort. We had begun to see each other, fully, clearly, and without judgment. And from that quiet, something true was starting to take root. The final weeks of summer passed like a soft breath, warm, familiar, and gone before you realized it. The air turned cooler in the mornings. The light stretched differently across the kitchen table, longer, gentler, as if the house itself was settling down. Tyler had started talking more about going back to school. He'd leave in a couple of weeks, and he was excited, eager to return to friends, routines, the momentum of his own life. Luke, on the other hand, wasn't going back. He'd finished his degree early, staying in town to figure out what came next. A job interview here, a part-time gig there. I could see the uncertainty in him, but also something steadier, like the ground beneath his feet had stopped shifting. One quiet evening, a few days before Tyler was set to leave, Luke stopped by again. No knock this time, just a soft tap on the open screen door. "Hey," he said, his voice softer than usual. "Hey yourself," I replied. "Come in." I had a pot of stew on the stove, the kind that simmered for hours and made the whole house smell like Sunday. He walked in, standing by the counter, hands loosely in his jacket pockets. "Tyler home." "He went out with friends," I said. "Said they're squeezing in one more bonfire before summer ends." Luke nodded, eyes drifting to the pot. "Smells good in here. You hungry?" "Always." We ate at the table again. No candle this time, just the soft glow from the kitchen light and the sound of a cicada somewhere outside, holding on to the last warmth of the season. Halfway through the meal, he looked up and said, "I'm glad I met you." I set down my spoon. The way he said it, so quietly and without pretense, stopped me. "I'm glad you felt like you could talk to me," I said. "I didn't just talk," he said, eyes steady now. I changed, or maybe I remembered who I was before everything got so complicated. I didn't say anything. Sometimes silence is the most respectful thing you can offer. "I used to think I had to tough it out alone," he continued, "that if I let anyone see the cracks, it meant I was weak. But I've learned that real strength is different. It's quiet, like you." That caught me off guard. I don't feel very strong most days. He smiled. "But you are. You listen. You stay. That's more strength than most people ever show." For a moment, I looked at him not as Tyler's friend, not even as a young man trying to find his way, but simply as someone who had become important to me, in a way I hadn't expected, yet couldn't deny. I stood to clear the dishes, and he helped like always. We moved around the kitchen in that quiet rhythm we'd fallen into, no words needed. When the last dish was put away, I leaned against the counter, drying my hands. He stood nearby, unsure if he should stay or go. "I don't know what this is," he said finally. "What we've built, what it means. But I know it matters." I nodded slowly. "It does. I don't want to lose it." "You don't have to," I said gently. Whatever this becomes, a friendship, a bond, something in between, it's not about the label. It's about the truth in it. Luke looked at me, and I could see it clearly then. The gratitude, the understanding, the deep, quiet connection that had grown between us. He stepped closer, not to close a distance, but to acknowledge it, to recognize that something had taken root between us that neither of us had been looking for, yet both had needed. "I used to think I didn't belong anywhere," he said. "Now I know better." He didn't stay long after that. He hugged me before he left, a real, steady hug, the kind you give someone who helped you find your way back to yourself. As I stood alone in the kitchen afterward, the room felt different. Not emptier, not sad, just full. Because in a summer that started like any other, something had shifted. I had seen someone, truly seen him. And in doing so, I had remembered something about myself too, the quiet strength of presence, the power of listening, and the surprising beauty of being a safe place for someone who never had one. And that, I've learned, stays with you. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched something in you, don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts or your own story in the comments, and subscribe to hear more stories like this. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.